Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode 256 of the Thought Team Navigating Now virtual roundtable series. I am your host, Anthony Ewing, CEO, co-founder here at Thought Team, and we go live every Thursday afternoon with leaders and leadership topics that matter most. We've had a lot of incredible guests on this year, 256 episodes in. I can't believe we're rounding out the year. A big theme of our discussion has been on how the landscape of learning and development is changing just as rapidly as the world around us. And today we have a guest that I personally and selfishly am super thrilled to jam with. And I think a lot of our learning leaders and professional developers are going to be really interested in today's conversation. Today, the episode is the future of learning and development, and our guest is Holly O'Driscoll. She is the founder and CEO of Ampersand Innovation, and we'll bring her forward so that we can make a good introduction. Holly, how are you doing today?
Hi, Anthony. Thanks so much. Really excited to chat with you. I feel like this has been a long time coming. I'm really happy.
Yeah, so you were brought to us through one of our newer colleagues, Adrian, who I know is well connected in the Cincinnati market, and I believe you both worked together directly or indirectly in the past. And
That's right.
what she told us about you is that no matter how quickly things are changing, you're going to have a hot take. And these are the people that I love to get closer to, because a lot of the work that you've done has been on the forefront of how we design and deliver great learning experiences. What I'm uniquely interested in is your background in design thinking. So maybe by way of introduction, share with us the work that you love to do and why design thinking has been this like through line for you in your career.
Yeah, it's such a great question, Anthony. And for me, I'm going to back up a little bit as well and talk about kind of my early days in professional life. So I joined Procter & Gamble right out of undergraduate school in the engineering organization. I spent about 6 years there before I went back and got an MBA and moved to the commercial side. And from there, I joined the corporate design organization. And around about 2007, design thinking came to P&G, really as the first large multinational organization to really tackle that approach and try to drive scale across an enterprise. And I was about to go have a baby when they had the first training at Stanford. And so I was too pregnant to fly. And so when I came back from mat leave, I got trained right away. And for me, it changed my life. It finally was okay to say, hey, people matter more than anything else. And if we're not delivering really thoughtful, human-centered experiences that are meaningful, that resonate for people, that are memorable, that are making a difference, then we're not doing the right stuff. And so those principles were really, really easy to fall in love with and really became the cornerstone of how I thought about kind of building my path forward from there, and had a variety of different roles in the organization, taken over the North America role and then ultimately global, and took me to about 20 countries to do this work in those places. And so I was operating more as an internal partner or consultant in that way. So I kind of flow around to wherever the needs were in the business. And it's a fantastic experience. We started out in the innovation space, and really over time, we're able to shift into innovation strategy and ultimately leadership. And so what was the golden thread kind of pulling all of that together? Really these core principles of human-centeredness. If you put people first as you're innovating, that's really important. If you put people first when you're doing strategy work and imagining what ecosystems are important for them and how to cultivate that environment, that's really important as well. And then to look further upstream and say, boy, if I'm a leader, I'm kind of responsible for creating those ecosystems and climates for other people to do their very best work. And so this thread of human-centeredness really has been a key piece of that. When I left to focus on my own business, that really became the focus. So the name Ampersand came from unleashing the potential of people and ideas, and very intentionally people first. So that's kind of the backstory there. Anthony.
I love that. We're going to talk about this concept of human-centeredness. It's obviously a concept that's been around for quite some time, and design thinking has as well too. And ironically, it was around the 2005, 2007 timeframe that I was also first exposed to design thinking, and it completely changed the direction of my career. I was working for large organizations, and I was seen as a bit of an entrepreneur within these organizations. So I had an opportunity to do a week-long intensive at IDEO in San Francisco. And it was like, my eyes were open to a completely different way of thinking. And most importantly, a completely different process with which we can create new ideas. Now, the evolution of design thinking is also fascinating, because I think at that time, I think a lot of organizations really bought into design thinking, but maybe didn't truly install it as the backbone of their organization or in their kind of ways of working. It was more like, fancy workshops with a lot of Post-it notes.
Yeah.
And then it feels like maybe the 2010 to 2020 range, it was almost as if design thinking kind of like quieted down a little bit. And, there was a lot of pushback against design thinking, that it wasn't a sustainable way of bringing big ideas to the organization. I think it's having a huge comeback right now, or at least aspects of it. And I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts on the evolution of design thinking, and how should we see it today differently than 2007?
Yeah, I love that you bring that up. So I actually have a talk that I give on kind of the 3 S curves of design thinking in my experience
Mm,
in corporate life. And about the first 5 years or so, we were really focused on building a facilitator network, and
yes.
ensuring that there were people who were able to be on demand for whatever the business needs were. And I think in that time, I think we trained 350 or so.
Mm,
And then we looked back after about 5 years and said, wow, of those 350, who are the ones that really have kind of stuck with it and done the most with this approach? And what we realized is that the profile of the people who were the best facilitators or the best at kind of keeping this alive in their business had a mindset that really
mm,
kind of brought these principles to life naturally, or deeply believed in that. And it showed up across all the vectors of their work. And so then we started to shift gears a little bit and say, hey, how do we think about cultivating mindset? Which was round about the time Carol Dweck was doing her stuff,
mhm,
right? and
mhm, yep,
and really coming out with growth and fixed as kind of the framing for mindset going forward. But as we think about building a human-centered mindset, the principles of curiosity, empathy, possibilities, iteration, why not versus, well, why
yeah,
should we do that, right? Why
yeah,
shouldn't we do
yeah,
that? Let's go lean in and find out. So that was kind of the second S curve of mindset. And then we looked around and said, of the places where people are most able to really engage with this mindset and keep it alive, what's happening in those businesses? And it was the leadership philosophy that really was a key enabler, right?
mm,
So when you think about the places where it was having a tougher time, I love that you talk about that, where maybe it was a fun couple of days and we had Post-its all over and
yeah,
we had a good time, we had good ideas, but you get back to your home organization and nothing happens. That has certainly happened in my lived experience as well. In fact, when we did that analysis to try to understand for those kind of 5 years in what's going on with those facilitators, we realized that a number of them had left and
mm,
kind of left the company. And we paused and said, well, why is that? And engaged them again in a design thinking like way on what's your story, what's the journey. So a little
uh-huh,
bit of practicing our own stuff for sure. And what we heard from some folks, not everyone, but some, was I saw that a different way was possible, and I think it's a better way. And it was too hard in
mm,
the business that I was operating in at that time for
mm,
me to fully bring this to life, and I can't unlearn it. And so they
mm,
had to move on and figure out what that looked like. Many other places, right, inside of the organization, there was a lot of support and championing of this approach and this mindset. But that wasn't universal. And I think that's true in all organizations, that you have
yeah,
pockets where there's a lot of strong uptake of a new way of doing and working and thinking and being, and others where you run into a little bit of roadblocks depending on the business situation and the leadership mindset.
mhm,
So those 3 S curves, I think, are some really great ways to think about it
yeah,
over the course of time. But I agree with you, from kind of 2010 to maybe 2020, it wasn't the bright, shiny object.
yeah,
And if I think about the turning point where kind of 2020, certainly all the work from home and let's dial into what do people need right now? I think that's really had some staying power and allowed us to thoughtfully lean into human-centered leadership and
mhm,
be really intentional about creating climates where people can do their very best work. And I think that shows up in
yeah,
the learning ecosystem as well. Some key tenets of that are psychological safety, It's one of the things I love, love, love to be a part of with teams. I got certified by the Fearless organization to lead the assessments and facilitate those debriefs back in 2021. And I think it's been game changing for clients to have an opportunity to lean in and to really have language for things that they were feeling, but didn't necessarily have the words to describe what it looks like. So the opportunities
Oh, I
to have
love
a
that.
psychologically safe space has
Yeah.
been really terrific. And then to have the words to say, hey, I've had these feelings, but there's not been words to describe it, I think has been a really key
Mm,
element of that as well. And it dovetails so nicely with growth mindset, which not only corporations have kind of gone deep on now, but I see that showing up in other ecosystems, both at the university and even K through
mm.
12 levels.
Oh yeah, you just said something that like I almost like got goosebumps because it almost reframes the definition of empathy, which I want to drill into in a moment. But you said, empathy is almost the practice of enabling people to speak to the feelings that they have when they may not have had the words to describe them.
Right.
Like that's so good, right? Like it's almost the inverse of maybe the way that we've seen or defined empathy in the past, which is like, you step into your learner's shoes, right?
Mhm.
Like you become the subject, you live a day in the life of, which, yeah, that's great. And it's good for focus groups, et cetera. But how about enabling the learners themselves to speak to those critical elements of their experience in ways that maybe they hadn't had the tools to before, which I
Yeah,
think is a
I love
fascinating
that.
reframe of empathy.
And,
Yeah.
I think I follow a lot of the work of Brene Brown and Adam Grant. They were on a
Yeah.
podcast together recently at the launch of her new book, Strong Ground. And she was talking about everybody has talked about empathy as walk in someone else's shoes. And she said, I don't want to walk in someone else's shoes. Walk, right?
Yeah.
And I think she's spot on, right? You don't have to do the same thing or have the same journey. You need to be able to understand it and
Yep.
say, wow, thank you so much for teaching me about the experience that you've had, but that doesn't mean you have to feel it too.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a
Yeah.
different dimension. She was calling that affective empathy.
Mm,
And so you don't have to feel it. You have to understand it and to get curious about it.
mhm.
But if you're actually going to be a great partner, either in a learning or an innovation or a strategy context, right, you need to be able to keep a little bit of space there such that you can be objective and to really be engaged in
Yeah.
moving that work forward versus kind of taking
Mm,
on some of those emotions and getting a little wrapped up in that yourself. So
yeah.
some really
I love that.
different lenses. So it's crazy
Yeah.
fun. This point about language, I think, is so compelling, Anthony. I've seen so many teams say, oh, wow, I finally have words to be able
Mm,
to talk about that. So it's specifically through the lens of psychological safety on creating these great climates where people can come with candor. And we talk about candor in the space of how do you show up with care? And candor is truth with care. Really
mhm,
different than if
mhm.
you're going to be given the cold, hard truth. Or I need to be brutally honest. If we get these really kind of negative interpretations of that sometimes, and candor is I care about you and I care about your success
Yeah.
and I care about the getting you the feedback that you need to hear, and I care about supporting you as you grow from that feedback.
Mhm,
And those are really new spins on things. I think even
mhm.
really in a post-pandemic context, as we think about human-centeredness, people have a lot going on right now, whether it's in their own roles. The geopolitics environment is a little crazy. Socioeconomics are a little bit crazy. And even if you look around at what's happening for people, locally in their own lives, nobody is saying, oh, I have plenty of time to pause and think. Said no one, I would say, in the past couple of years, right?
Yeah,
Everybody
yeah.
appears really overwhelmed back to back. I was talking with a client a couple of days ago, and they said, I'm really sorry. I came a couple minutes late. It's 3 o'clock and I haven't had any lunch. I'm like, well, you should choose
Go
yourself
make
and go
lunch.
get some lunch, right? We're asking an awful lot of people right now.
Yeah.
Leaders are asking a lot. A lot is being asked of leaders. And so if we're going to create the conditions for people to do their very best work and to learn when the world seems to be changing faster than we can keep pace, paying attention to these environments and ensuring that we're giving people the support that they need to
Mm,
try,
yeah,
to fail,
yeah.
to struggle, and to learn coming out of that, I think is a really, really key tenet of the future of learning and development.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah, we're speaking today with Holly O'Driscoll on the future of learning and development. I think what we're zooming in on is maybe this new, or uh, um, we're being reminded of one of the most critical components to creating a human-centered experience or even a human-centered organization, and that's our ability to connect and empathize with others. And even that definition, as you hear Holly talk about what are the key considerations to human centricity, they've changed over the years. And
Change.
what I'm hearing you say, and my perspective here is there's kind of two big things that have happened over the last 5 years, and 2020 was maybe the dawn of our own personal experiences. The lines between our personal and professional experience were just completely busted open.
Right.
And that was very jarring. All of a sudden, we were, sequestered to our homes and turning on the cameras. And all of a sudden, we had to create space to have these conversations about everybody's unique experience. And as leaders, we had to truly and deeply empathize, whether you liked it or not. It exposed a lot of the dehumanization that happens sometimes in organizations.
Right.
I love the fact that here we are a couple years now post-pandemic, and that expectation has not shifted. In fact, it's probably even greater. And so to make it practical, one of the litmus tests that you can have as a leader, or in our world as a designer and facilitator of learning experiences, if you're not starting the design discussion with conversations like this, what's happening in the world, what's happening in our organization, hey, let's kind of stand at the doorstep of our team and our organization and look out and just acknowledge what's going on, you're probably not off to the right start when it comes to truly designing for human centricity. That takes time, that takes intentionality, and I know how hard that is when we are trained as leaders, as designers, to just go to task. So that's, I think, one aspect that has truly changed, that even down to a tactical perspective, challenges us to create the space to acknowledge the circles of context with which we bring in. I'm curious, Holly, as you think about the proliferation of technology and information now being completely free and at our fingertips, does that shift the way that we think about human centricity, or the way that we empathize with our teams and our learners? Like what is the role of human centricity now in a world where information is so widely available?
Well, when I think about human centricity and information, I think we all have access to so many different things. Largely, the democratization of so much of the knowledge in the world really is at our fingertips, and as you mentioned, free. But I don't think for a moment that it replaces the need to have a face-to-face conversation, or even as we're having today in a virtual context, right? That feels very face-to-face, to lean in and hear, hey, I really care about you, and how do we think about kind of working together to get the outcomes that we're looking for? How do you communicate that depth of relationship? I don't think for a moment that the technology is going to replace our relationships, or the need for thoughtful coaching or
Mm-hmm.
development opportunities. I don't think that technology is going to pause and say, hold on a second, have you thought about this? Right. In a way that is really rooted in your own personal lived experience, and
Yeah.
bring a story that maybe happened when you were in career transition, or when you were new to professional life, or when you were on a business trip and things didn't go the way you expected and you had to navigate it and
So
figure it out.
good.
Right. I
Yeah.
think just the
So good.
lived anecdotes of, tell me about a time when this happened for you,
Yeah. Yeah.
is really, really important. One of the things that we spend time on now is even kind of the space of feedback. And
Mm.
you can probably get feedback on a memo, or on an email, or on a PowerPoint deck, or on data. But I don't think for a moment that if I paused and said, hey, tell me about a time in the past month when you helped someone,
Mm.
and how that showed up in the results of the project that you're working on. I don't think that you're going to get an AI platform that's going to ask you
Yeah.
those things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
those are the things that I think are key differentiators in really human-centered leadership, and opportunities for growth and development that maybe don't look like the things that
Yes.
historically would come to mind, but are really, really critical dimensions of possibility thinking, and also offering just support in general, saying,
Yep.
hey, how can I support you? And not assuming that we know.
Mhm.
So if I
Mhm.
think about technology, it could very easily, you could say, hey, I'm struggling with XYZ. What do you think I should do? It's going to give you feedback that's loaded with assumptions. And if you're a really great human-centered leader, you're going to say, hey, what looks like help for you right now? I want to be there to
Mhm.
support you in whatever way I can, but I need to know exactly what that looks like for you right now. And if you need an hour or a day or something or 2 days to come back and we'll talk about it further, take the time, right? To really
Yeah.
allow for that depth of reflection. And I
Yeah.
don't see where technology is going to replace those moments.
I love it. And what you're speaking to here is what is even further rooting, our team at Thoughtium in this ethos that we have of human centricity and this vision that we have of designing and delivering, the best human-centered experiences. It's
Mhm.
interesting. I was at a conference a couple months ago, and it was a learning and development focused conference in a very specific industry. And I had the opportunity to kind of walk through the exhibit hall, right? Kind of the standard, booths of all the vendors and things of that nature. And I was walking around, and I couldn't believe. I guess I could, but what I saw was 97% of all of these organizations in L&D were focused on how to leverage AI, how to create the tech stack that supports and enables and enhances your training, how to augment training with AI avatars and virtual and simulated role plays and things of that nature. And what it had completely washed out was the actual human aspect of being a learning practitioner. And so I left and I was like, gosh, all of the questions that we love asking our clients around the human side of being an L&D professional. How are you investing in new skills in your trainers? Do you have a 3-year learning strategy that considers both technology and also the human experience? These were questions that, like, not only were they not being asked, they weren't even present in the room. And that excites us at Thoughtium. And it sounds like, your practitionership at Ampersand is rooted in that as well too, which is so exciting to say, hey, the industry is going left and it's our time to go right. The conversation that we're having today has always been a conversation. I think it's more important today than it ever has been. So I'm curious, like, how do you see this shaping, your work at Ampersand moving forward?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I was just telling someone this morning, I think there's never been a better time to be a human and to be focused on human-centered leadership and
Yeah.
opportunities to bring this to life, right? And
Yeah.
if I think about how that's showing up in the work, one of the first questions I ask when I get a client that calls and says, "Hey, I've got this business issue," I'll listen to that a little bit, and then I'll say, "Tell me about your team." And they say, "What do you
That's
mean?"
it.
I said,
Yeah.
"Tell
Mhm.
me about your team. What's going on in your team?" And
Mhm.
they say, "Why does that matter?" I said, "It's really the only thing that matters." Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Business problems generally are not the hardest part. It's the people dynamics and getting the right conditions for people to do their very best work that becomes really, really core. And I don't think there's going to be a replacement for that from a technology level, right? That you're not going to get
Mhm.
the level of face-to-face team interaction that we all know matters a lot as you think about cultivating relationships. And so as I look ahead, I think there's certainly opportunities for leveraging technology, specifically AI, but
Yeah.
it doesn't for a moment add meaningful value without human judgment and experience and wisdom and curiosity. Right?
Yeah.
To say, does this sound like the right thing? I'm not really sure. What do
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
think? And to have a
Yeah.
conversation about it. Most of my innovation work now, certainly we tap into that, right? And to get some thought starters on
Mhm.
what might idea buckets look like, what might some of
Yeah.
those categories look like. But that's not ever going to be a place where somebody says, "Oh, my team's really struggling. We're down 2 people." Or,
Mhm.
"Wow, we're really trying our best to make it work, but I'm really worried about a handful of folks on my team who are at high risk of burnout. What do you think I could do to try to mitigate that?" Those aren't places
Yeah.
where you're gonna tap into your AI system and say, "Hey, how can" it's just
Yeah.
not the same level of engagement. And so if we really think about human-centeredness as being so core to us being at our best, to allowing us to be really humans who are living full lives. I told you in a couple of
Mhm.
days I'm gonna be under the water shark diving, and I wanna be able to do that. That's not something I'm ever gonna do looking at my laptop, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
pausing and really driving these opportunities for connection with people. I love the way that you talked earlier around these inspiring and creative immersive learning experiences. In fact, one of the ones that Adrian and I did together a few years back, we rented an Airbnb on a cliff in Beverly Hills. And we had a team that went for a series of kind of offsite inspirations there. But I had breakout groups out on the pool patio.
Mhm.
We had a writer from a TV show come in and talk to us about story sequencing, uh,
Mhm.
and really thinking about what those experiences might look like. And we weren't sitting in a hotel ballroom freezing,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? We were out being people, solving
Mhm.
problems for people and taking inspiration from each
Mhm.
other in that space. And I don't think those things are replaceable, right?
No.
You
No.
can't have that same kind of inspiration. And I bet if you ask Adrian today, she's going to be like, "Oh yeah, here's what we did," right? And those were the experiences that we had there. Because I would have people stop me both inside of my corporate role, and then now I'll get random notes from clients saying, "Oh, this picture just popped up. I remember what we were doing here and
Yes.
how meaningful that was," or "I heard this song that we played in our workshop and it made me think of the experience that we had there." But nobody's saying it reminded me of the idea I generated on post-it number 27 that we brought to life. Nobody says those things.
Yeah. Right.
They say,
Mhm.
"I remember what it looked and felt like to be a member of that team and that moment and to share space with you and the others." And that's the
Absolutely.
magic of human-centeredness. So
I love that. I love
the
that.
there's an embodiment of that I think is
Yeah.
really important, that
Yeah.
I see my role as holding space for people
Mhm.
to be able to talk about things that maybe they haven't talked about before. One of the questions that we ask is, "What's undiscussable?"
Ooh.
And that's a really rich one.
Mm.
Right? Where are the tension points in the team today? What historically has been undiscussable? All right, if
Mhm.
it's been undiscussable, why is that? And how do we work through that together in the context of getting better teams and better team alignment, better outcomes, and learning every step of the way? So those are some really important drivers of those dynamics.
Yeah, I love that,
But it's
and I
crazy
love
fun, right?
it's so good, it's so good, and again, I feel like as you know, people leaders and learning practitioners, we've been having these conversations. It's a big part of our role in the industry, but they just feel so much more important today than ever, is to, preserve and augment the human experience in a world where, um, it can become overwhelming in terms of the access that we have to information, in the learning world, to content. And in most cases, our job now as leaders is to deeply empathize and provide really great context, right? I
Yes.
just heard this the other day that, like, as a learning leader, our primary role before was to kind of curate the best content.
Mm.
And today it's more so to serve up the best context, because
Yeah,
content
right.
is free and it's abundant and our learners are going to find it no matter what.
Mhm.
It's it's the context with which we allow them to play with that information and that knowledge that
Yeah.
AI will never create. And it's almost ironic how, um, in order to truly maximize AI as a technology, you've got to feed it a ton of context. Like,
Mhm.
that's called prompting, right? The best prompting is chock full of context, because that's not something that AI yet can bring to the table. We've got
Yeah.
to take that same approach and lens to the way that we're working with our learners. It's context, and it's king. And it
Yeah.
does require a little bit of slowing down, and it does require some empathy. So,
I think
man,
it's
I
so
just,
true.
yeah,
Yeah, it's so
yeah,
interesting, right? If you think about the loading of the context, I mean, I'd call that onboarding for a new team member.
love it.
It's the
Totally.
same,
It
right?
is. Yep.
And if you're gonna set up a team members for success, giving them the context and the stories. And if I work with a team where we've done kind of similar sessions over the course of several years, as team members would churn in and churn out, and I say, "Are you sure you want to do that again?" And they said, "Yeah, because we have new team members and we need them to have the context
Mhm.
for this
Mhm.
kind of human centeredness work that we're talking about as leaders." And it becomes a really important driver of their path forward. But that's really effective onboarding, which
Yeah.
also, maybe you've seen this as well, Anthony, doesn't seem to be top of mind for a lot of organizations right now. It
You're right.
seems like there's a lot of outsourcing of the empathy of what it's like to
Mhm.
be a new hire or to be a new team member. And that's really tough. You see people struggle.
Mhm.
And how do you start to lean into that if you don't have any kind of human touch and support in that way? The relationships matter, right? If you think
Yeah.
about one's ability to learn, I think I remember, what was it, the 70-20-10 on the 10% happens in a classroom context, right?
Mhm.
20% is kind of on the job and
Yep.
70% is from others, right? And so if
Yeah.
you think about kind of learning in that way, if you don't have access to the others that can challenge your thinking, can say, hey, I think you're onto something. Let me make it a step further, take it a step further and make it better,
Mhm.
or figure out how to support you in bringing that idea to life. I don't think we're doing the world a really good
Yeah.
service, right? If we're not creating those spaces for human centeredness. But wow, it's really, really fun. You talk about a couple of things around these human experiences. I've been known to quote Walt Disney movies in a couple of my sessions, Anthony, because there's a scene in Rapunzel, right? Maybe you've seen Rapunzel.
I know the
Yeah,
story, yes.
yeah, it's Rapunzel, but she yells, "Find your humanity!" And so I've been known to shout that out in a workshop or two. Um, and then also, if you imagine Frozen, there's what are you so afraid of, right? Anna
Yeah,
yells to
yeah.
Elsa. And those are the things that I feel like we need to be yelling more of inside of
Mm,
our organizations today. Because if you go back to kind of Ratatouille, it's anyone can cook, anyone can bring human centeredness to life. Do you want
mm.
to do it? What's holding you back? What are you
Yes,
so afraid of? I think are
yes.
some really important questions. And I would say early on in my career, Anthony, I was told that I wear my heart on my sleeve. And that was a little bit of a ding at that time.
Mm,
And I still wear my heart on my sleeve.
yeah,
And I'm really proud about that because
yeah,
I think we need more
yeah.
people that are showing up as people and not as kind of corporate avatars that shouldn't feel things or shouldn't be excited about people.
Mm.
Even our conversation today, I would describe as I feel taller as a result of what we're talking about versus many conversations, right? You might look back and go, oh, I felt really shorter after I left that dialogue. I don't
Yeah,
feel that way, right? I feel
yeah,
alive and excited around what's possible. And
yeah.
those are really important drivers of ideas and learning and strategy and leadership development that, boy, I think we ought to have more of.
I love it, I love it. I wanna, just spend a minute or 2 making this really practical, and then if you're up for it, we'll do a quick lightning round
Let's do it.
before
Yeah.
the end of the show. But, to make this practical, you've got me thinking about, like, our conversation today. It's really been focused on, the future of learning and how that's rooted in this concept of human centricity. Human centricity is not this advanced degree. It's not rocket science. It's not something that you necessarily need to go get classically trained on. Um, what you heard today throughout today's episode were a couple of really good questions that you could begin conversations with that do create a little bit of space for deeper empathy and human centricity. I want to throw one out that I heard from you, Holly, that I thought was just gold, and then I want you to maybe share, like, what are one or two or three, like, high impact questions that we can put at the front end of a design sprint or even a conversation with a stakeholder that creates a bit of the space and invites people into to empathize.
Yeah.
One of the questions you just mentioned more recently is, and I loved it. Correct me if I'm quoting this wrong, but you said, what is the undiscussable here?
Yeah. What's undiscussable? You got it.
And
Uh,
that's
and
to me, that if there's ever a question that's more conducive to pausing, creating space, building context, and inviting empathy, or inviting people to speak to those feelings that they may not have words for, that's such a great conversation starter. So I'm curious, do you have any other kind of, like, tools in your belt to bring more human centricity into our everyday conversations?
Yeah, I love that question too on what's undiscussable. Another one that I find myself asking often is what could be different?
Mm,
And that's really in the space of, hey, have I even thought about what could be different? Right? If
mhm.
I'm
I love that.
trying to figure out what's next or what a challenge might be in the context of a team. One of
Mhm.
the other ones that I really go to quite often is if you were to wave a magic wand and say, hey, these one or two things are so important, and they would be the first two things I would do if you gave me the opportunity to change something on this team, what would it be?
Mhm.
And so sometimes I would actually take the little silver plastic magic wands to teams. I carry depending on where I'm flying to, they would
There's
get
your
broken in
dizzying
my
again.
backpack, right? But yeah, I've been known to carry those around,
Yeah.
and thought bubbles with dry erase markers. I think I have a couple of
Mhm.
those even sitting around here at the bottom of my desk. But yeah, lots of different ways to kind of bring that to life. But these ideas of, what would you have told your former self
Mhm.
about
Mhm.
this moment, right, is another
Mhm.
one. These reflection conversations are really great. What do you
Yeah.
wish you knew when you were 25,
Mhm.
that could make this better today, right?
Yep.
What do you think you could learn from someone else in a different part of the organization that might help you see with a different lens? I ask often what perspective is missing and how
Yes.
do we go unlock access to that
Mm.
perspective, whatever it is. So if you're sitting on a multifunctional team and you tend to talk to the people from the same organization all the time, maybe you should go talk to somebody else or talk
Yeah.
to somebody in a different kind of level of tenure, or level in the organization. Maybe they're fairly new to the company, but they're very experienced. So they're also bringing a really different perspective and lens, that becomes a really important driver of everyone's learning and their experience going forward. So asking what perspective is missing
Love that.
would be another really great question.
Yeah. The high impact questions are they're just the absolute best for um, inducing a little bit of this much needed empathy in our work. Let's do a quick lightning round to wrap things up. And this
Do
is
it.
really focused on getting to know you, Holly, the human, if you
Mhm.
will.
That's right.
Because we've learned a lot about you as a practitioner today, and I have so much respect for the work that you do and the way that you do it. So the rules here are I'm going to throw maybe 4 or 5 kind of quick questions. You got to answer them briefly and what first
Great.
comes to mind. Okay,
Excellent. I'm in.
awesome. What is something that you're reading, watching, or listening to today that like you're really geeking out about?
Oh my goodness. I have 2. Can I get 2? Is that all
Yeah.
right? First one, I'm about halfway through Brene Brown's Strong Ground book. That's fairly
Yeah.
new. I just finished up How to Be Bold from Ranjay Gulati out of Harvard. So I'm going to
Mm,
give you actually 3. And then there's a podcast called Wark, WARC, on Spotify that's talking about the vanishing middle, which I think is really interesting as well. And one of their
mm.
earlier episodes also talks about kind of customer experience and kind of why that's so important now, which also all of it dovetails kind of nicely into human centeredness as we've been talking today. So
Mm.
uh, I am a huge consumer of content in terms of the podcast media and from books. And I'm always reading to find out what's hot and what's next because I like to try on new things and weave those into my work. So you're going to get a long list from me every time you ask that question,
I
Anthony.
love it. I love it. Favorite place to dive?
Oh my goodness, Belize, San Pedro. Yeah.
And you're going where next week?
Key Largo.
Kilo. And have you been?
Oh yeah, I go a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, my oldest son and I
Um,
dive there, and really, really fun. He's out certified me now. He's a rescue diver
wow.
certification. I just have advanced, so we can't wait to get in the water.
Um, Scariest moment diving.
Oh wow! When I ran out of air at 60 feet in Hawaii in the late 90s,
Oh my
so that was a
gosh.
little crazy. But they teach you what to do, right? So if you
Yeah.
have your last breath in your tank, you hum your way up because this is where kind of my technical background and kind of laws of physics really become useful. Because as you ascend to the surface, the air in your lungs actually expands. That one breath can get you pretty far, and you are fine because it's the compressed air that's in your lungs the same as in your tank, right? And the higher you go and ascend, that one breath can take you to the surface.
The humming piece though, is that like does that regulate how much air like what's the humming aspect of that?
The humming is so that your lungs don't explode on the way up.
Oh,
so,
yeah, or
so
that.
because expansion is really important, right? And you need to have
Okay.
a little bit of a pressure release valve, and that's the role of the humming to allow some of those bubbles to leave the body.
When you're in that moment, like do you have the mind to go to some of these tactics? I mean, I guess if you've been trained well, I'm just thinking the first thing I would do is freak out, which is probably why I'm not a diver.
Ah, I don't feel panic under the water. I was
Yeah.
just on a shark dive a couple months ago with my son, and the sharks come so fast and close to you. They're hitting you in the head with their tail fins, and you can count their teeth, and it's amazing. and I'm completely at peace. But I feel very well trained and very well equipped to do that. In fact, I think it's in some ways analogous to the work I do with teams, because
Yep.
you never know exactly what's going to come up. But as the facilitator, I need to be prepared and be able to hold space regardless of what comes at me
Mm-hmm.
and keep it together, because some people share an awful
Mm-hmm.
lot of really deep, important things that can be really emotional, right?
Yeah.
Who we are shows up in the work, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
And yeah, so keeping my cool under pressure, I think whether I'm under the water or with a team on the surface, yeah, both of those I think kind of pull from those same levels of very deep training to kind of
I
work
love
you
it.
through that.
Yeah, the connection there is super, super cool. It doesn't surprise
Yeah.
me that you're fascinated with diving. Okay. This is a new one.
Tell me.
Hannah's sitting to my right, and I have a feeling she's going to die laughing when I ask this one. Okay, you're hosting a holiday meal, whether it be, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, whatever.
Yeah.
Is it a potluck where you're asking people to bring food, or are you taking care of everything?
Oh my goodness. If I'm hosting a holiday meal, I'm kind of taking care of everything, because I
Yeah.
have a vision for how I want the plate to look. And I want that to be very congruent with,
Yeah.
with the delivery to be exactly like the vision. So I often talk about design intent through execution. The
Yeah.
design intent needs to line up in the execution of what it looks like. And I've become a little bit of a control freak about that. I love dishes and paper goods and all those things. In fact, at our previous neighborhood, we would have a giant Halloween party with 120 people in the backyard. And
Mhm.
I would make loaves of pumpkin chocolate chip bread as a party favor for every person, every
Oh,
family that came. And so some years I'd make 85 loaves of bread. And in fact, I made 6 last night for the teachers at my kids' school. And then I made 4 more actually between calls earlier today. So thankfully I
well,
had the job and timer just set at the right thing. So I've got 10 loaves for the kids to take tomorrow for teachers too. Because I think it's really important to, I make things from scratch. That's important to me, almost as a
yeah,
creative expression of kind of what the work
yeah,
is. But yeah, you got it. I got to make my own stuff, and I plan for that for a long time. I try to really get intentional about this. Is so crazy, right? My punch bowl invitations for parties, like they need to look a certain way, and
yeah,
then like plates need to reinforce that, and like there's a theme that kind of goes with it. So it's a little bit, maybe I'm revealing my OCD-ness as related to party planning and those things, but
yeah.
nothing I like better than a great party, Anthony. So if you come to Cincinnati, we will have you over.
Yeah, and I won't bring a dish.
You won't bring a dish. That's okay, because I can imagine it, right?
No, but I asked that like selfishly because we're having like a very deep debate within my family, and my family's very much divided on potluck versus like you just take care of it. And I am very much a you just take care of it proponent. At the same time, I can't really talk because like I'm the single guy that kind of shows up with a bottle of wine. So like if I was ever tasked to just take care of it, I might have a different perspective. I might be sending out the potluck email. Anyway,
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
we'll move on. Last question for you, Holly.
Yeah, tell me.
What is something that you know today as a leader that you didn't a year ago?
Oh my goodness. Wow. How important the support system is for people when they're in transition, right? I feel like
Mm.
I knew that mattered. I'm really deep, I would say, with the number of people, deep in with the number of people who have reached out in the past year who
Yeah.
are in transition, and really in touch with how important the network and the opportunity to connect is, and how exciting, really, and delightful it is to hear from someone who you haven't connected with in a long time, and to really dive in and say, of course, let's get together, let's chat, let's
Yeah.
grab a coffee if we're in person, or let's do, a
Yeah.
conversation like this. I enjoy that. I didn't really know other people enjoyed it so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it seems like they do as well. And it's always a refreshing thing to kind of keep that in mind for sure. It's exactly what we're talking, Anthony. There's no replacement for human connection. We could have a thoughtful email exchange, but it would be nothing like this. I wouldn't
Yeah.
feel taller from an email. Right.
I love that you said that. I think that's maybe a big insight of mine this last year too, which is how important the network is, especially in a time where there are a lot of people in transition, looking for work, or maybe, looking to kind of make a pivot. I just sent out a message to our entire team the other day in saying also that the type of work that we do and the type of work that you do, Holly, uniquely positions us to help those folks.
That's right.
And that oftentimes is outside of the margins of any type of contract we might have or scope of work that we have with our clients. I think a marker of the type of culture you've built as a client services organization are how many people are reaching out to you to say, hey, like, I'm having this pivot, or I want to extend my network, or I need to really find an exciting new role. Can you help out? And from my perspective, we have the privilege of being in that position. And I love to, to field some of those requests, and I'll drop anything for that conversation, because
that's exactly right.
Yep, we've seen how it's drastically changed people's careers and lives. And it's not like we have the skills that nobody else does. It's just we're in the throes of these conversations all day, every day. It's one of my favorite things to do is help a leader that I've either worked with or worked for in the past find their next.
Yes,
it's literally my favorite thing to do.
It's so true. And even making those connections for people that maybe it leads somewhere, maybe it doesn't. But I can't get up and look at myself in the mirror every day and feel congruent about really showing up as a human-centered advocate and leader and bringing more human-centeredness to the world if I don't pause and say, hey, people matter more than anything else. How might we, really focus on the needs of our people right now? Because the rest is pretty much going to take care of itself if we get that right. I believe that deeply. And it's important, right? And if we're not modeling that, then we should not be doing this work. And so that feels really, really important to me.
That is a wonderful note to end on. Holly, I think you and I just broke the record for the longest live stream that we've done here.
Oh my goodness, we could go on for hours.
And I'm like, this isn't even halftime, and I don't think this stream has like a limit on it. At the same time, I want to respect your time, and we just so appreciate the way that you've stepped into, our community through, Adrian, the perspective that you've added here today for our audience, and maybe more importantly, like the work that you're doing, the work that you've chosen to invest your time in. I'm sure it also required a couple of big swings and risks to really position yourself to be able to reach people and organizations the way that you do. So thank you for your work, and thank you for your practitionership.
Oh, my pleasure. It's been really a fun ride, and I'm super excited to have been invited to your show today, Anthony. Thank you so much. And if we need to come on for a round two, because our time is up, we could do a sequel at some point. So
outside of LinkedIn, how do people find you?
Yeah, I feel like that's really the best place. Let me tell you the candid truth, right? I paid an agency a few years ago to build me a website, and I never followed through on the content because I've been busy with clients. And back to the human-centeredness, I'm going to take a call from a person and do that any day of the week versus focus on kind of content delivery. So that is my somewhat humiliating, somewhat proud truth to share, right?
That's great. Yeah, just how do you get a hold of Holly? Just reach out to Holly. That's it.
Yeah, just find me. Yes, I will get back to you on LinkedIn. And that for sure is the easiest way. You can get my contact information there too under the kind of contact tab, or drop me a message there. That's probably the best path. So
awesome. Again, Holly, thank you so much. And we will definitely see you back at the table sometime soon.
Great. Thanks so much, Anthony. Have a great holiday.
You too. All right. We want to thank everybody who joined today's episode. Wow, that was such a fun episode. It's like I barely looked up at the clock. And, this theme of human centricity, I think, is something that we are going to continue to shine light on, unpack, and bring to different corners of our client network and our community. It's real and it's needed, this conversation. And Holly is just a perfect example of people out there that are focused exclusively on bringing better human experiences forward. So thank you all for joining. Those folks who joined via LinkedIn, our community is growing by the day. So feel free to follow Thoughtium on LinkedIn. That's where you'll see a lot of these episodes. You can also see current and previous episodes at thoughttium.com/live. You can also search by topic at /live. We will not see you all here next Thursday due to the holiday. I tried to convince my team to go live on Thanksgiving, but that idea was shot down. So we'll see you a week from Thursday. Thank you all, and have a wonderful upcoming holiday week.